Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Tenpenny Files. I'm your host, Dr. Sherri Tenpenny. The Tenpenny Files isn't just another podcast. I hold daily discussions with guests whose research has discovered evidence that challenges official narratives that we commonly see in the headlines. Topics span the spectrum from national government, history, astronomy, and travel, to food and fitness, to vaccines, health, and health policy. And I speak to authors every week who write about faith and biblical principles. I want to introduce you to topics you've never heard of before and topics you wish you've had more time to explore. For listeners ready to question the mainstream stories that you've been told, the Tenpenny Files is the show for you. Join me here each day at 3 p.m. Eastern Time to hear from authors and documentary filmmakers who have something important to say but have often been silenced or censored. But before I introduce you to today's guest, I want to encourage you listeners to become a Tenpenny Prime member. You will benefit from the monthly white paper, recorded presentation, and the amazing Ask the Expert masterclass that we have at the end of every month. These are over the moon, and they're really, really educational. We want to teach you about your body and what you can do about it. To learn more, go to primemembership.drtenpenny.com, and hopefully you will join and support the show. Today's conversation is with Billy Bond about his book, Scrap Shedding, and his educational programs on permaculture. Billy, welcome to the Tenpenny Files. Thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you for having me. It's a joy to be here. And as I told you before we got live here, I would be no less dumbstruck if I were sitting in front of Michael Jackson right now because you've been a long hero of mine, my wife, my family, and what a real honor to be here with you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for that compliment. I appreciate that. You know, you've lived a life that's incredibly diverse. Military service, electrical trade work, farming, and now teaching regenerative stewardship. When you look back at what threads do you see God weaving through all those experiences that led you to the life's work that you're doing today?
Well, that's going to take a minute to unfold, but I'll try to be concise about it. I'm the product, myself and my five brothers, of two convicted felons that decided to take six kids on a bank robbing tour from Pennsylvania all the way to California and then all the way back. It was crazy. At the time, I was just a little sprout, maybe 5 years old, but my brothers were 9 years. My oldest brothers were 9 years older than me. So by every metric, I should have been scrubbing dishes in Sing Sing. By everybody's, by every statistical standard, I should not be doing what I'm doing right now. And believe me, there for a time there, I was definitely on the road to be a chip off the old block, as it were. But having mom and dad being in prison and being raised by a grandmother who was recently widowed, and here she is raising all six of us boys in a little town called Coatesville, Pennsylvania, just outside of Philly. It you know, I, it was a beautiful childhood, believe it or not. Didn't miss my parents, strangely enough. Then all of a sudden they get out of prison and we move back in with them and we end up in Oklahoma. And of course, you can imagine what life is like when you have two. Well, my mom was, believe it or not, a subject of MK Ultra while she was incarcerated in not only West Virginia, but also Oklahoma, and I suspect under Jolly and West. So life was a living hell in that house growing up. And so when I got out of there, the first thing I wanted to do was escape this freak show called called what it was, my life at that time. And so I joined the army. I loved it. I mean, I loved the structure. I loved how it turned me from thinking that criminality was a possibility for my life because quite honestly, I was a pretty talented criminal, smarter than the average bear. So I was thinking, okay, maybe this is a career option. Guidance counselor never talked about it, but hey, who knows? So got out of there, met my wife, the whole 9 yards. She came from a farming background, and I never once gave a second thought about, is this something for me? It was years and years later that I made that decision that okay, this is exactly where I want the trajectory of my life to go. But the whole time, I think the good Lord was really holding these unseen strings that I didn't know about, where just I can count numerous times where if I zagged instead of zigged, I would be dead. Or if I went this way and that way, and in every single case, it felt as if And I didn't know it at the time because I was anything but a Christian back then. I was anything but a child of God. Well, I was a child of God, but certainly not a blood-bought soldier of Christ that I am now. There were so many different things and so many mistakes that I made. And with the benefit of hindsight, I now realize it was the good Lord putting me through that crucible of fire, I think, to shape me into the person that I became. And it wasn't without a great deal of struggle, a lot of mistakes, but you know, through all that, I like to think that, I've been molded and shaped, beaten up, put down, all these different things to create the person that's sitting in front of you right now, who's done honestly some astonishing things in my life that I never would have believed possible. So hopefully that was the short answer, but here we are.
Well, that is a phenomenal background. Wow. Are you writing a book about that, or do you have a documentary about your whole life? Because just that would be fascinating.
Other people have told me about it because it's so far over the top that nobody wants to believe that two parents put six kids in a car and funded the whole sightseeing tour of the country by robbing banks. And strangely enough, back then, my dad would rob Kentucky Fried. I mean, this is crazy. You can't make this up. He would go into the KFC, come out with a bucket of chicken and a bag full of money, and say, and the first thing he would say when he got into it was a Volkswagen van that we were all in, "Hey, y'all, the Colonel's been good to us." And he would, it was strange. I mean, but you think this stuff is normal. And the thing is, it's so far over the top that I'm not sure a whole lot of people would ever believe it. But I have been approached a time or two by friends saying, "Hey, you really ought to write a story about this." And I'm just still wondering if anybody would ever believe it. I mean, we got all the records, we have all the proof. I mean, this seems so far over the top, but it seems incredulous even to me that we weren't shot up, and we came pretty darn close when the cops finally caught up with them. In fact, my earliest memory was when they did get caught was, my mom looking back at us from the police car and me still choking on the tear gas that they hit us with. They had just robbed a bank and the cops were waiting on them. They got them. And if it weren't my dad, if it weren't for my dad behind the wheel at that time, my mom was like, "Run it, run it, run it." They would have just shot us all and killed us. But if anything, I really think this is a story of redemption. I mean, it's it's so far over the top that really I'm struggling myself to believe that it actually happened and I lived through it. But the good thing about it is that we were raised with a God-fearing grandmother. And just like the Bible says, raise a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Grandmom, even though at that time she was in her 70s raising us, while they were locked away in prison, you know, she made us really understand that we were loved, despite the fact of her being recently widowed. And I know there's got to be a story in there. I just don't know how to make it unfold. And honestly, Dr. Tenpenny, my biggest concern is I don't want anybody feeling sorry for me. I don't want anybody thinking that I think I think my greatest testament right now is having been through all of that. And despite that, and despite what the statistics say, here I am standing in front of you right now. Here I am growing all of my own food. Here I am teaching people all throughout the world how they can not only grow food, but do it for free and do it in a way that you can do it without being a burden on anyone else around you, and doing it at the same time while revitalizing soil and doing things that that most people just don't think are possible, but they are, and they can be done. And I'm a living testament that it can be done. You just got to have despite all my undoings and everything, I've always had a good work ethic. So I'm not afraid to learn. I'm not afraid to try. I'm not afraid to get out there, and I'm not afraid to fail while daring greatly. So I'm sure I didn't answer your question quite the right way. The bottom line is, I don't know how to make a story like that unfold and make it believable.
Well, I think you just did. It was very, very good and very interesting. So let's get into it, what you were talking about in terms of soil. People today are talking about soil function everywhere. I mean, it's the big thing. They talk about pesticides, and now we're facing the pesticide immunity bill, and we're talking about all the glyphosate in the soil. And you frame soil as a living, intelligent ecosystem. Can you describe what you see happening beneath the surface, from microbiologically and also spiritually when soil is restored?
Absolutely. This is one of my many favorite topics. What people don't realize, they see dirt, and there's a difference between dirt and soil. When they see soil, they don't really know the difference between dirt and soil. So we got to first make that distinction. To be soil, to be something that's alive, something that produces food, it has to have, let's call it we'll make it the equivalent of the Serengeti. For example, out there in the middle of Africa, you don't just have lions running out there. You don't just have gazelles. You don't have elephants. You have a harmonious blend of all these things. And if left alone, or without a whole lot of intervention, it kind of operates all on its own. Now, let me talk about a healthy forest. For example, up the side of my mountain here in North Carolina, you have seven, and I dare say 8 layers of a forest in order for it to be healthy. You'll have an overstory, which are your large trees. You'll have an understory, your smaller trees. You'll have shrubs. You'll have vines. You'll have an herbaceous layer. You'll have a ground cover. You'll have vines. You'll have roots, and you'll have the last one, which is the mycelial layer, which is not only the teeth of the forest, but it's also the internet system of the forest. Now, this is information we didn't have many years ago, but now we know that the good Lord put all this stuff in place. Now, let's go to the soil. You have the same exact thing functioning there, and it has to be done in the right ratios. Just like you can't have too many lions in the Serengeti, or you can't have too many elephants. Otherwise, the system will balance itself out. Well, in your soil, the same thing happens. You have nematodes, arthropods, you have bacteria, fungi, and then your top predators at the very, very top, believe it or not, your equivalent of the lion in the Serengeti is going to be your worms. So what do we do out there in most farming environments? We go out there because we overgraze, we don't know how to manage them properly. And so now we find out that all of a sudden, all of our cows, all of our sheep, all of our ruminants out there, all of a sudden develop a bunch of parasites, and we don't know where they came from. So what do, Dr. Tenpenny? We do the reductionistic approach, and we hit them up with a bunch of dewormer. Now, when I give a bunch of animals, my ruminants out there, a bunch of dewormer, what am I doing? I just knocked out all the lions in the Serengeti. Not only is that dewormer deworming the inside of that animal, it's also deworming your top predator in the soil, which are worms. Okay, to a certain extent, even your nematodes. They all die. Every single time we take a reductionistic approach to something that's very, very simple. So that's exactly how the system works in our soil. So we go out there, and the room behind me is basically our lab. We learned under Dr. Elaine Ingham. I'm sorry, I struggle when I say that name. Probably the most consequential microbiologist, soil microbiologist in the world. And my wife and my son and I all had the pleasure of working under her. And so if I go out in the pasture right now and I take a soil sample and I go look at it under the microscope, I should see if it's perfect, if it's really, really good, I should see in a perfect sense at least 125 micrograms per gram of both bacteria and fungi. But what do I see? In 99.9% of all the soils we test out there from farmers, it's not even, we'll see bacteria, plenty of bacteria, no fungi. That's a problem. And then we wonder why our animals are having all these problems. So what we're figuring out, what we've discovered years ago, and what a lot of other regenerative farmers have figured out, is that if we graze properly, the system will always stay in balance. And if it's out of balance, I can use the compost that I make out in my barn, this biocomplete compost. I can use it, make an extract out of it, spray it over that field, get things into balance, and it will stay in balance as long as we don't do foolish things like overgrazing or too much compaction. So just like the great Bill Mollison said, the problems of this world become more and more complex, but the solutions are embarrassingly simple.
So you've worked with heavily polluted ground, but instead of fear and despair, you approached it with biology, microbes, and a design system. What have those experiences revealed to you about the creator's building capacity to heal the land?
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, but it once again is going to take a minute to unfold. Last year, when we had that, I'm calling it a manufactured hurricane. Dane Wigington pretty much agrees with me. I'm in Western North Carolina. We were at ground zero. And Dr. Tenpenny, you might find this interesting in your people out there as well. Um, when that thing came through, there were so many weird things that unfolded prior to it. Chemtrailing like you would not believe up one side and down the other. And then we had a storm that came in days before the actual hurricane, dumped a bunch of rain out here. And then all of a sudden, the hurricane finally arrives. We're ready for it. We're, doing what we can. And we already smelled a rat. Dane Wigington is a friend of mine. And we already knew something was up. Things felt weird. They looked weird. And when you work in the environment the way I do, I know what normal's supposed to look like. So when it's abnormal, you know something's not right. So anyway, storm gets here and we knew something was way, way off because immediately the storm comes and goes and it really wasn't that bad. We've had worse storms, at least where I live. Now, we got on our knees and we prayed that the good Lord put a hedge of protection around our farm and we lost one tree in Western North Carolina during that whole thing. And better still, it was a tree I needed to chop down anyway. So
Jesus.
yeah. I mean, the good Lord, we asked him to cover, to cover this place, and he is faithful. So I had to point that out. Every chance I tell that story, I make sure I point that part out. So anyway, for another hour or two, we had power, we had everything, nothing changed. We're like, okay, not a big deal. We could look around and see that there were trees falling elsewhere because I do live on a mountaintop and at about 3,000 feet. And we're like, okay, well, nothing. And then all of a sudden, the power goes out, but we still have internet service. And then all of a sudden, the internet goes out. So now I'm starting to smell a rat because as a 30-year journeyman electrician, I know how this works. If something were to fall on the line, the the internet went out first, the fiber went out first, and then the power. The power line sits above your internet line. So I'm like, okay, what are the odds that a tree fell, missed the power lines, and landed on the internet? So I'm like, okay, something's strange here. And then we had power for another couple of hours, and then it goes away. And now, all of a sudden, for days and days, no communication, no nothing to the outside world. And the only thing we did have was access, strangely enough, to NPR, the local NPR station. And I'm thinking, okay, this thing isn't really all that bad. For 3 solid days, they never said the extent of the damage. So we jump in the truck with the chainsaws, thinking, okay, we'll go out and look. And then when we get to Asheville, which I live about 45 minutes north of Asheville, we get to Asheville, and oh my goodness, I was like, you have got to be kidding me. There are houses, entire houses floating down the river, the French Broad River, and I'm like, oh my goodness, man. And there are people literally laughing like this is the funniest thing they've ever seen. And there are almost certainly thousands of people dead. And they're on the bridge pointing and laughing. It was so surreal. I was like, am I in another dimension? So now a few more days go on, and we're driving around doing anything we can to help other people. And then finally, we get over to Marshall, North Carolina, which is the next town over from me. We get over there, and all of a sudden, in this community called Rollins, we're hearing about, I mean, they were just absolutely decimated. But people were starting to come back in to try to figure out the extent of the damage. Now, most of the people out there are senior citizens, and they were all complaining about respiratory problems. Meanwhile, everybody in the state and local governments were saying, oh, everything's just fine. The river's okay. It's crazy. And I'm smelling what's clearly something chemical coming off that river. And everybody around there is complaining about respiratory issues, but they're telling us everything's fine. The workers that were out there had black rubber boots that were coming back green. And all of a sudden they're saying, well, no, there's still no problems out there. So we get in Dr. Will Spencer to come in and find out exactly what's going on. Everybody he treated was fine. But meanwhile, all the way downstream in Lake Douglas, where all these rivers converge, there are people dropping like flies, and of course, nobody's talking about it. So that brings me back to your question. So all of a sudden in this Rollins community, we know that it is toxic beyond imagining. We did the test, and I had to go to Dane Wigington and engineers on the other side of the state in order to find honest people that would give us honest test results. And then meanwhile, $10,000 of my own money later, all of a sudden we were able to get these engineers in here to do a lab test to find out exactly what was in this stuff. We got the results back a few weeks later, and it confirmed exactly what Dr. Will Spencer confirmed with his scalar testing. And his scalar testing confirmed that there was even nuclear waste down here, nuclear waste that were covered up. They were Superfund sites that everybody had hid that were further upstream near Asheville. All the mustard gas of World War I, we didn't know this at the time, was buried at certain spots, and we believe were uncovered during this storm and brought downstream. We have pictures of barrels that have nuclear waste signs on them that wound up all the way down in Douglas Lake, and they're telling us everything's still fine. So we're thinking, okay, we got problems here. And I prayed, we got on our knees to the Lord asking, what do we do? What I didn't realize is that my background in soil science was already 90% there. What I didn't realize is that the Lord would put in front of me people like Dr. Will Spencer and former UFC champion Pat Miletich, who swore up and down they had a way that they could eat up these toxins. Well, I'm like, you boys better be right because I'm gonna retest this thing, and that's exactly what we did. So I followed their protocol, put down. Now we already had a base of how polluted this was. Sent the results off to Dane Wigington, and Dane is losing his mind. He's like, dude, I've never seen numbers this high. And so we had other people look at it as well. Our engineers are like, these numbers are off the charts. So I'm like, okay, can we fix it? So we took Dr. Will's protocol, which basically consists of extremophiles, let's call them that, extremophiles that are facultative organisms, meaning that they can switch either aerobic or anaerobic, depending on the conditions. But now I have organisms in my compost, in my biocomplete compost, that are obligate anaerobes. So we're like, okay, let's give this a shot. So Dr. Tenpenny, I had to say all that to say what the results were. So we started in December, and by March, our test results proved that all of these forever chemicals and everything else were gone from the areas we treated. We treated once a week, and I'm talking all of the forever chemicals, all of the heavy metals, even though they were chemtrailing us nonstop the entire time. I couldn't even believe it. So we paid for more results. So $30,000 later, I'm finding out from our engineers and also with our scalar testing that in the 1 acre spot that we used as a test bed, all of it was gone. Every single bit of all of these forever chemicals were gone. And all we did was apply what the good Lord put out here in nature and put it in the right forms. All we did was now theoretically, this was supposed to happen. Let me back up a little bit and give a historical example of how I knew this would happen. During Chernobyl, one of the downwinders was a farm called the Lubka farm, Leubke, I believe is how it's spelled. Now, they had Geiger counters going off all over the place except for one place, and that was at the Lubka farm. Nobody could figure out why. And then intrepid researchers got in there and figured out why. Well, the Lubka farm was known for pioneering windrow composting. Basically, what I'm doing, biocomplete windrow composting. From that day until now, a Geiger counter will not grow out, will not operate on that farm, even though at the time when Chernobyl happened, it was all brassicas, your cauliflowers, your broccolis, your things like that that they were growing, and they could not get the Geiger counter to go off. Now, of course, mainstream science hid all this. They didn't tell anybody about it. So when I knew about that, I'm thinking, okay, can we apply what they did at the Lubka farm out here in Western North Carolina? And will it work? And it did. And I went out there, told the whole world about it. And of course, we had some really strange things happen after that. All of a sudden, people attempting to bribe me with, quote, more money than I know what to do with if I would just, leave it on the shelf. And of course, we didn't play that. My grandbaby plays here, put a price tag on that, you know. So the long and short of it is, we found a way to do it. It works, and it's open source for anybody out there wanting to do it.
Wow, what a great story. And I want to circle back with you and have you say again what it was that we used. But for right now, we need to take a quick break from our sponsors. So hold that thought because I don't think it was clear what you said you actually treated that acre plot that you used as a test plot, because I know everybody will want to know more about how to get rid of forever chemicals. But we're going to take a short break right now to hear from our sponsors. America Out Loud Talk Radio plays the Tenpenny Files on the iHeartRadio network every day, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. You can also listen by going to americaoutloud.news and hopping onto their media player, and you can listen from anywhere in the world. And if you've missed any of these great conversations that we've been having on the Tenpenny Files, you can find them on Spotify, Pandora, Apple, TuneIn, iHeart Virtual Studio, and on any of my platforms, which are drtenpenny.com, drtenpenny.substack.com, and also on X, Rumble, and Instagram. Because there's so many great books and so many wonderful documentaries with so little time to read and watch in our busy lives, this show is meant to maximize your time and direct you to resources where you can do further reading and further research. Sit tight, we've got a couple of messages from our sponsors. We will be right back with more from Billy Bond and about his book, Scrap Shedding, which we have to get to after the break. Zeolite is a detox spray. We work specifically with a company called Touchstone Essentials. They are an incredible company. We've been working with them now for several years. And zeolite is a mineral that goes through your body like a one-way basket. It will clean out heavy metals such as arsenic and mercury, aluminum, cadmium, and it hooks onto those metals from a one-way perspective. So once it's bound, it goes out through your urine or your stools and doesn't get redeposited in other places. Everybody needs to have a detox product in their life, and this one is so easy to use and it's so safe. You can take it when you're pregnant, you can take it when you're nursing, you can give it to little children, you can even give it to infants, and quite frankly, I give it to my dog. I actually put a little bit of the zeolite in his water because until we all stop living in a toxic world, we all need to get some of those extra toxicities out, the heavy metals, the persistent organic pollutants, the things that are floating through the air, the different things that we come in touch with in our environment. And we are a big fan of zeolite from Touchstone Essentials. We've been a big fan of their products for several years. Go to drtenpenny.com/detox to get your first bottle of zeolite spray for $50 off.
Well, only when the government bows to the people will America become great again. This is Malcolm Out Loud here. Join me in pushing back against censorship, my fellow Americans. Right at the top of AmericaOutloud.news are the words: many voices, one freedom, united in the First Amendment. Now is our time, my fellow Americans. AmericaOutloud.news, liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Today we're talking to Billy Bond about his book, Scrap Shedding, and his educational program on permaculture. Let me tell you a little bit more about today's special guest, Billy Bond. Billy was a U.S. Army is a U.S. Army veteran, trained butcher, permaculture designer, a electrician, co-founder of Perma Pastures Farm in Western North Carolina. Through hands-on workshops, the permaculture that you can watch on YouTube has more than 173,000 subscribers. Billy teaches practical, scalable systems that help families become more resilient and self-reliant. At Perma Pastures Farm, Billy and his family focus on regenerative agriculture and biological land restoration using methods that turn waste into fertile land. Their signature approach shows people how to raise meat, eggs, compost, and gardens essentially for free by leveraging nature's biology, waste streams instead of store-bought inputs. Billy's mission is simple: empower others to grow their own food, restore their land, and build a life of independence anchored in healthy soil and strong community and in his faith in God. So, Billy, thank you so much for being here and welcome back to the show. Circle back to just give us a really brief recap of what you said before the break. What did you treat the land with to get rid of the forever chemicals?
Absolutely. I'm glad you kind of brought me there. I get so excited on this stuff and I start losing my trail. First thing we did, there is a product out there. It's called Soil Saviors, and that's Dr. Will's product. And it's basically 7 different things you stick in a 5-gallon bucket. I was a little bit concerned about whether or not this stuff was going to work. And you can go to the website and find out what each one of these ingredients is. I mean, Soil Saviors, that's where you want to go. It's either .com or .org. And to be honest with you, a lot of people pitch me a lot of stuff, and I was thinking, okay, I'll give it a shot. So what I did every week, every single week, let's say when I was able, I would put this stuff in the aqueous form along with my biocomplete compost. And I would put it in an aqueous form, which is basically nothing different than taking a couple of handfuls of compost, putting it in a 400 micron bag, and then squeezing it under water in a 5-gallon bucket. And so I'm extracting the organism. That's one way to do it. That's a way everybody at home could do it. Put it in a 5-gallon bucket and then look at it under the microscope. When I get the right concentrations, I know that I'm ready to spray it out there. So I can take all these little organisms, put them in an aqueous form, and then spray them out there. So what I did was mix the Soil Saviors, which I shouldn't have done because I got 2 different types of organisms in there that don't necessarily get along. So for the first month, I did it wrong. I was mixing it all together, which you shouldn't do. You should put out Soil Saviors all by itself. And if that's all I did, it would have been fine. But I mixed them together for the first month before I realized, oops, not the right thing to do. And we still hit the finish line by March. So the Soil Saviors has in it all these extremophiles that will eat up these forever chemicals. And what my biocomplete compost does is repopulate it with the organisms that every bit of soil needs. Now, my compost is not going to work where you are in Ohio, I believe, right?
That's
Yeah.
right. Mhm.
So yeah, the cool thing, it could also be a troublesome thing. Even though I have compost that is many magnitudes beyond the specifications of what it requires to be biocomplete, it's only going to work within my region because these organisms are indigenous to my region. But the Soil Saviors works no matter where you are. These are extremophiles that are sourced all over the planet for the express purpose of tying up these forever chemicals. So in a nutshell, the Soil Saviors product will tie up or eliminate all of these forever chemicals in medium and long chain carbonic acids. And then my guys come in and repopulate everything. And every single demonstration site that we've done so far, whether right here on the farm, where we had intentionally contaminated soil in our high tunnel, we turned it around using the very same protocols, but starting with the Soil Saviors, and then a week later use my compost, Soil Saviors compost. So that's essentially it in a nutshell.
What's an extremophile? I've not heard that word before.
Basically, another name would be, oh shoot, there's an extremophile. These are sourced from some of the most extreme places on the planet. These are your archaea. So they're smaller than bacteria. And I tend not to call them archaea because most people don't even understand what that is. But extremophiles are basically they're found in extreme places in the ocean, extreme volcanic vents, all these different places, and they tend to be organisms that will get the job done when we think it can't be done. Because, they're called forever chemicals. We're believing that there's nothing we can do about it, but no, we can. If all you do is make really good compost, you can, you're not going to eliminate it necessarily, but you will tie them up in medium and long chain carbonic acids. That we know for sure. But combining the two got us to the finish line in a big way. So instead of so what we did was started a foundation where we go out. Now, the first place we did, I should back up a little bit, Dr. Tenpenny, to prove that we actually crossed the finish line, we wanted a visual medium to explain it. So in March of last year, we went out to the same place that was heavily polluted and created a food forest. We brought in a bunch of volunteers and showed them, okay, now that we have this soil squared away, now that I feel comfortable having you out here, now let's put in a food forest. And that's exactly what we did. We put in fruit trees, fruit shrubs, ground cover. And through that summer, each and every one of those trees, this soil was so far back on the men that each tree, even though they were bare root trees when we put them in, they all had fruit sets on them. Didn't matter. Apple, plum, pear, peach, it didn't matter. All of them produced fruit, which we didn't really want. Not the first year. We just want them to put effort into their roots, the first time out. But we wanted to prove that yes, even though everything else around here is decimated, look at this spot. And
Wow.
it is absolutely thriving. And as long as you don't do anything foolish, it'll stay that way. So that's where, the management of the people that actually own the property comes into play. So I had to train them on what they should do and what not to do. And they did. So far, they've done everything wrong, but it's still thriving despite them.
Well, it just goes to show you God's garden, is going to, you give it the right food, just like our human bodies. You give them the right food and the right circumstances, it thrives. And for trees and shrubs and things like that, it's soil. It's the living soil. You teach families to raise nutrient-dense food at essentially no ongoing cost. How do you do that?
This is what I think the good Lord has put me on this earth to do, to not only evangelize this magnificent design science called permaculture, but also in addition to that, to show folks out there that we're not fusing DNA here. It doesn't have to be difficult. All you need to do is bring the right dogs to the hunt. For example, let's say you're in a regular neighborhood. Okay, you don't need a whole lot of place. You don't need a big place to grow food. Okay, let's say you have a front lawn. Does it have to be grass? Because the whole notion of a lawn didn't really exist until a few hundred years ago. Nobody ever thought about having a lawn. This is what the ruling elite used to do back in the day, in accordance to Sir Francis Bacon when he wrote the New Atlantis, talking about how we can whip nature into place to do what we want to do. If you can get yourself out of that reductionistic world thinking and realize, okay, let me go out and look at nature. What do I see out there, and how do I replicate it right here on my farm? So if it's as simple as a person raising chickens, doctor, I should say that I got to preface this by saying that instead of sending my son off to college, despite having a full ride academic scholarship, we sent him off to a penal colony in Australia to go learn under the very, very best permaculture designers. So we found out what he enjoyed, what he loved, and instead of sending him off to college, we had him save his own money and send him off to train under the very, very best in Australia. So down there, not only did he learn under the great Jeff Lawton, he also learned in better detail a system called the chicken tractor on steroids. There's no steroids involved, but what it is a system in which you can raise all the meat you could possibly eat for a family, all the eggs you could possibly need for a family, all the compost you could possibly. In fact, this system will produce, depending on the number of chickens, anywhere between 1 to 3 cubic yards of finished compost, better than anything you can hope to buy every single week, depending on how you scale it up or scale it down. So he sent him over there. He came back. I was already doing this system. We worked it out and became probably the world's experts on how to feed chickens for free. So what do? Well, there's some people up near you that have written a book. It's called Sean and Beth Doherty. They wrote a book called The Independent Farmstead. So I use that book as my guideline, where these folks raise everything they and their animals eat right there on the property. So I said, okay, what if you're not there yet? How do you get started? So what I did, because I'm 45 minutes away from Asheville, I said, well, what if, and I'd already been doing this for years, what if I were to go to all the organic restaurants here and get their food waste and feed it to my chickens in this system, which is exactly what I did. And in fact, I've done this in places, little one-horse towns like DeKalb, Texas. I don't care where you live in the United States of Amnesia. I can show you how to raise all of your chickens all of your eggs, all of your meat for free and raise all your compost and do it for free no matter where you live. So what we do in a sense essentially is go to these restaurants and say, look, how much money are you wasting on dumpster? I mean, I'm simplifying it. It's a little more genteel than this, but find out, hey, instead of putting all this stuff in the dumpster, why don't you let me have all of your organic waste and let me feed not only my chickens, but my pigs with it? So as a result, Dr. Tenpenny, I mean, I can't go through all the bells and whistles, but if people want to know exactly how to do this, I have playlist after playlist after playlist on my YouTube channel at Perma Pastures Farm. But in a nutshell, one trip to Chipotle, just so everybody can get an understanding of this, one weekly visit to Chipotle was enough to feed 100 chickens and 6 full-grown pigs.
Wow.
One visit.
Wow.
One visit. Now, that's just one place. I've made deals with the University of, I couldn't even believe this. When I was looking for places to work with, every university out there was falling over themselves when I told them, you never tell them, hey, I'm going to feed this to my animals. You tell them the truth. What you say is, I'm going to make some really awesome compost out of this, which is exactly what I'm doing. So what this means in terms of our ruminants, I mean, in terms of our omnivores, like our pigs and our chickens, we're raising pigs, and nobody wants to believe this. We raised our pigs for 21 cents a pound, and we raise our chickens for free. We raise our meat birds for free. All of our eggs are for free. Every single thing is for free if you just know how to operate in this system. Now, before anybody goes out there and tries this chicken tractor on steroids, you do want to have an operational knowledge of A, how to raise chickens, and B, how to build compost. And we show you all how to do that for free right there at the website or in my Patreon channel. I can show anybody how to make biocomplete compost just by following some simple rules. A lot of this we couldn't do on YouTube, strangely enough, but we could do it on our Patreon channel. But anyway, we can show you first, learn how to make compost, learn how to raise chickens, put them both together in the same system, and you will have a self-licking ice cream cone.
Wow. You know, that kind of brings me to the point of asking, what does PIMP stand for? That's behind you. I think that that's really pretty important. And our audience there's a lot of people that are listening to this, but there's also people who actually watch the podcast. So they see this, glowy kind of blue light behind you that says PIMP, I think it's .com. Oh, PIMP cast. Okay. What does that stand for, Billy?
It stands for Permaculture is my passion. And the whole reason we came up with it, I was, I'm being a kid. I mean, I know a lot of people that are audibly listening to this can't tell that I'm a brown person. And I was thinking, man, if I really want to evangelize what I'm doing to the kids out there in the hood, I got to speak that language. So they call each other pimp as a term of endearment. There's other terms they use as well. Some of them begin with an N, which I will not use. So I'm thinking the only way I'm going to find myself comfortable is if I can dress up that word. Pimp is a real awful word. It's a really awful word. And so I had to make an acronym out of it. So I did. So I made it Permaculture is my passion. And I made a podcast out of it to reach out to all these kids that are in the hood like I used to be, and thinking, sadly, most of these kids, they think the only path to success that they're ever going to have is through athletics or through entertainment. They don't even think twice about the fact that, you know what, I can make a living with my mind. And if they see somebody like me who came from where I came from, all of a sudden, able to retire at 48 because I did make some really good moves in my life, because I was able, when I say retire, I mean leave the electrical trade completely behind and do what I want to do, wake up every day and evangelize this magnificent design science. If I can do this, then maybe it's just a little more accessible to that kid out there who's been caught up in child sex trafficking. Or maybe it's a kid that was, abused, or maybe it's some lady out there who's thinking, her wife just ran off with a go-go dancer and now she's raising 6 kids all by herself. I mean, if they can see somebody that came from where I came from doing astonishing things that nobody on the planet is doing right now, and then teaching a number of others to evangelize, hey, you know what? You don't have to go to the store for everything. Or maybe they want to be like me, and I call myself the permaculture pimp daddy because it has a ring to it and it's funny to the kids. I don't particularly like it, but when I'm getting letters from a kid who was once upon a time a gangbanger in Washington, D.C., telling me, and I get choked up every time I talk about this, telling me about how he grew up in an environment that was every bit as bad as mine, in the middle of gangs, violence, theft, you name it. And because he heard my story and he heard about what I'm doing, is now a farm manager at a big farm in Virginia because he now discovered that it was possible because he heard me doing it. And because I speak that language from time to time, and because I say things that may be a little bit that may not be palatable for a whole lot of people from time to time, because I do that, I was able to get into his podcast section. And now all of a sudden figured out, I'll start raising chickens in the middle of this neighborhood, which, by the way, the HOA or the community said that he wasn't allowed to do. And then so he's saying, look, dude, I can't raise chickens here, man. They're telling me I got to get rid of my chickens. I went to my son. I said, do you have any ideas? My son came back and said, well, tell him his chickens identify as dogs. And
Oh, that's really
it,
good.
why not, Dr. Tenpenny? Everybody else can be whatever they want these days. His chickens identified as dogs and he got away with it.
Oh
So
my goodness.
we're telling everybody, you don't have, tell them your chickens identify as condors if you're in California. Tell them they identify as bald eagles. Just do it seriously. If everybody can pretend to be something else, why not twist it on its head and use it for your own benefit? Tell them your chickens identify as dog or your pigs identify as dogs. There's ways to get around all of this stuff. And then we've taught people how to guerrilla garden. And what that is basically gardening on land that you don't own. Maybe it's owned, maybe it's in a national park. People are growing weed out there. Nobody ever thought of growing tomatoes. So we show people how to requisition land, public land, and grow more food than you ever dreamed imaginable. There is a VA hospital right now in Leavenworth, Kansas, that has a food forest there, a clandestine food forest that I put in there over a decade ago, and probably almost nobody knows about it. And it's on its own right now. It's thriving. It's doing wonderful things. I planted these things all over this country. I've planted them on construction jobs. So nobody can tell me that this can't be done. We have so much food, Dr. T. I'm dead serious. We got so much food coming out of our ears that right here on this property, I got 8 freezers out there filled to the brim. We had to give away, and because I'm also a butcher and I've been trained by Michelin star chefs, I'm also teaching butchery classes for free and giving away all of the meat to all the chickens we process, all of the pigs we process, all the sheep we process, and then cows. I mean, we have to give away all the meat because we have 8 freezers that are plumb full with more food than we know what to do with. That's just the meat. I'm not even talking about the orchards and the food forests and all the other harvests we're getting out of here. This stuff is incredibly, I'm saying it's easy. Now, everybody's going to have a beginning point where it's not so easy. But if I can learn this, a kid that grew up in the hood with convicted felons for parents that are still not wonderful people, if I can do this and retire at 48 and do it full time, there's not a person in the sound of my voice that can't do the very same thing.
Well, Billy, this has been just a magnificent conversation that we've been having. We've got about 3 minutes left, and I want you really briefly to explain the difference between biocomplete compost and conventional compost, and why is it different? Give me a concise answer on that.
Brilliant question. If you go take every bag of soil that you can buy on the shelf, every last one of them, we've tested them all under the microscope. If anything, they have bacteria, and maybe they put a nematode extraction in there, which is absolutely insane. There's no other life. What makes biocomplete compost, what makes it a self-licking ice cream cone, is that it has the right amounts of bacteria, fungi, nematodes, protozoa, arthropods. You don't just have bacteria and arthropods. That never happens in nature. So when you put it in the capacity that nature would have it, the beautiful thing, Dr. Tenpenny, is that once we apply it, it stays applied unless something very, very stupid happens, like compaction, or you go out there and decide to put a bunch of 7 dust on it, which you should never have to do. Weeds are a function. The only reason you see what people call weeds, we call them pioneer species. The only reason they're out there is that is an open testament that your soil's out of balance. You don't have a dandelion problem. You got a lack of compost problem. You don't have a cricket problem. You got a lack of turkey problem. So if we can remove everything from this reductionistic worldview and move it into a holistic worldview, we find out that every step you take towards nature and God, you're going to get 10 of them right back to you. And I think I heard you say something like that.
That's really wonderful. So we've only got like a minute and a half left, Billy. So tell people where they can find your YouTube channel and where else can they get your materials, because this is absolutely not only fascinating, but essential.
Well, thank you so much. You can find us at Perma Pastures, that's plural, Farm, Perma Pastures Farm. The podcast, the Permaculture Pimpcast, you can find it on every podcast platform. It's getting really, really crazy out there in the pot in the and you're going to have to go back and look at some of my older videos, folks, because it's gotten to the point right now that YouTube has become so onerous that any time I get anybody on that channel talking about anything, if like Dr. Tenpenny, when I interview you, we're going to have to do it on Rumble because every single time I get somebody on there that talks about something that's really worthwhile, they either will give me a strike. I mean, Barbara O'Neill got me taken off for bringing up zinc for crying out loud for 2 weeks. And so anyway, that's where you can find us. We're doing a lot of stuff right now, and we also have coming up, and we're bringing people like Dr. Tenpenny out there. It's the Sovereign Health Summit that's going to be in North Carolina. I can't wait for you to be out there. And Dr. T, you're going to actually meet some of the doctors I talked about that helped me with this soil. So I'm going to put them all in the same room, and everybody out there is going to be blessed in a massive way. So look that up, Sovereign Health Summit, and can't wait to see you in person. Once again, we met twice before, but you probably don't remember it. I was probably just giddy as a schoolgirl. So thank you
Hey,
so much.
just give a little plug for that Sovereign Health Summit, which is in North Carolina. It's March 19th, 20th, and 21st. I'm going to be a speaker there. Obviously, Billy's going to be there. We'll have a lot to talk about. Barbara O'Neill will be there. Stephen Pigeon is going to be there of the Sepher. It's going to be just a
That's
mega.
a that's a different thing altogether, Dr. T. That's another thing altogether. We're in October in
Well,
this is going
that
to be October 27th through the 31st. It's an entirely different event, much bigger platform, and yeah, the one you're talking about is not the one we're affiliated with.
Well, they're both good events because I think I'm going to be at your one in October too. So just give a little ancillary plug to both of those. And we're out of time for today, everybody. So thank you so much, Billy, for being here with us today. I will see you tomorrow or the next time right here on the Tenpenny Files, 3 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, or on any of your major podcast platform. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Goodbye and God bless.